Hello students, today we will discuss the first lesson of Beehive, The Fun They Had, Part 1. The story is written by Isaac Asimov. Isaac Asimov was an American writer and professor of biochemistry at Boston University. Asimov was a prolific writer who wrote more than 500 books. He is best known as a science fiction writer, most notably for his Foundation series and I, Robot. I will start by giving a short summary of the story. Actually, the story is a fun story set in the future. The story is regarding school life and how those children who do not go to school miss school, and how they feel that their ancestor, that is the present generation, you all, meeting and helping each other and having fun. In the end, we come to know that this story is an imagination by a young girl, Margie, who comes to know that her ancestors used to go to school and she feels that they all had a lot of fun when they went to school. Let us see this picture. This picture indicates that how our future schools will look like. The kids will be learning through computers and digital platforms. Like there will be robotic teachers instead of the real teachers like the one you all students are being taught right now. There will be no books. Everything will be available from the computer itself. There will be moving text displayed in the screen and the students have to go through that moving text for their studies. Next is the virtual classroom. In future, the institution like schools will not be there. Children will be learning from their home. This situation is somewhat similar to the situation we are facing now. As you all know, because of this pandemic, we are not able to go to school and we are conducting virtual classes now. It is evident that you all are missing going to school now, and similarly in the future, due to digitalized method of studies, students might miss the fun of attending the actual school like you people. So let us begin with the story. Margie even wrote about it at night in her diary. On the page headed 17th May 2157, she wrote, "Today, Tommy found a real book." Here, the main character of our story is Margie. She is having a habit of writing a diary. So, one day, what she is doing, she is writing about this in her diary that on 17th May 2157. So you just see the date mentioned over here, that is 17th May 2157. Currently we are in the year 2020. So you can imagine that the story, it has been already set up in the future. So it is almost 142 years afterwards that she is mentioning about it. And she has mentioned in her diary entry that today her friend Tommy had found a real book. It was a very old book. Margie's grandfather once said that when he was a little boy, his grandfather told him that there was a time when all stories were printed on paper. So she is mentioning in that diary entry that the book which she found, it is a very old book. And she is also mentioning that once her grandfather had mentioned that when he was a little boy, his grandfather used to tell him about the time when all the stories were written on this type of printed papers. Margie's grandfather's grandfather used to study like you people are studying now. He used to study from the books, and he used to have the pages and all stories printed in that paper. They turned the pages, which were yellow and crinkly, and it was awfully funny to read words that stood still instead of moving the way they were supposed to on a screen. So here Margie is mentioning in her diary that when she and Tommy were going through the pages of the old book which they found, the pages of the book, it had started turning yellow and it was crinkly also. The meaning of crinkly means as the books or the pages turns old, it starts to have forms folded lines on the corner of the pages. So this book has also many folded lines on it, and as she was reading these book, it was like very much fun for them because they used to study from the computer or the e-books where the words used to pass on. They were not learning or studying from any notebook or something. So when they saw this type of book, it was like very much fun for them because the words were not moving, they were still on the book. And when they turned back to the page before, it had the same words on it that it had when they read it first time. And then it was like when they finished one page and they turned the page next to when they went to the next page, and after finishing it off, when they turned back again, they found the same letters, words still on the page. So it was like very much fun for them because in their ebooks, the words they are just moving out, and as you finish reading it, the words will not be repeated again. So when the words were still on that pages, they found it very funny. Gee, said Tommy, what a waste. When you are through with the book, you just throw it away, I guess. So, this was the expression of Tommy when he saw this book, and he just mentions that it is such a waste. So, he's telling that once you finish reading this type of book, what you have to do, you have to just throw it away. Our television screen must have had a million books on it, and it's good for plenty more. I would not throw it away. So he's comparing the old book and the book from which they are studying now. So he is mentioning that their television screen on which they are studying now, he is mentioning it is having millions of books on it, and as it has been the words are moving in that, plenty more books he can read. So it is not like that old book, once you have read that you have to just throw it away. These e-books are better than the old books. Same with mine, said Margie. So Margie is also agreeing with Tommy that I also agree that it is a wastage, that we have to throw the book once we finish reading. She was 11 and hadn't seen as many telebooks as Tommy had. He was 13. So she was an 11-year-old girl and Tommy was 13. So maybe she might not have read as much books as Tommy because he was elder than Margie. So she agreed to Tommy. She said, "Where did you find it?" And then Margie is inquiring about it, that from where Tommy found this old book. "In my house," he pointed without looking because he was busy reading in the attic. So when she is asking that where did you find this book, he just pointed out and he gave answer that in my house. And he was very much busy reading that old book that without looking on her, without looking at her face, he just pointed out and he just said that from the attic. Attic is a space just below the roof used as a storeroom. So he mentions that he found this old book from the storeroom of his house. Margie is asking Tommy, what is it about? So he's replying, it is about school. Margie was scornful. School? What's there to write about school? I hate school. So when Tommy replies that this old book in it is written about the school, she was having a scornful expression on her face. Scornful means showing think something it is worthless. So she used to hate school. So when she heard that in that old book it is written about school, she was disliking that, and she is telling or asking him that school, what is there to write about school? And she is also mentioning that I hate school. Margie always hated school, but now she hated it more than ever. So, as every young student, she also didn't like to study. So she always hated to study, and she hated the school. But now the situation had become more worse, and she hated it more and more. The mechanical teacher had been giving her test after test in geography, and she had been doing worse and worse. So her mechanical teacher, that is the robotic teacher, was giving her test after test in the subject of geography, and she was performing worse and worse in it until her mother had shaken her head sorrowfully and sent for the county inspector. So as she was been performing very badly, her mother, she was now very much sad about it, and what she did, she just sent for the county inspector. County inspector means the person who repairs or he who checks about the computer. He was a round little man with a red face and a whole box of tools with dials and wires. He smiled at Margie and gave her an apple, then took the teacher apart. So here the description of the county inspector is given. As you can see the image, he was a round little man with a red face, and he was having a whole box of tools with him, and which he was going to use to repair the e-computers. He smiled at Margie and gave her an apple, and then took the teacher apart. And once he comes to Margie's place, what is doing? He is giving her an apple as a good gesture towards her, and then he is taking the Margie's teacher with him. Margie hoped he would not know how to put it together again. So when this county inspector is taking away Margie's teacher, she is praying that I hope that this county inspector would not be able to repair this computer. And as he would not be able to repair it, she has to not, she don't have to study any more. But he knew how all right, and after an hour or so, there it was again. But the county inspector, he knew what the actual problem was, and within an hour or so, what he did, he just repaired everything and he bring back the computer again, large and black and ugly, with a big screen on which all the lessons were shown and the questions were asked. So within an hour, the county inspector came back with Margie's teacher, and she was like very much upset when she saw the county inspector, and she is thinking that again this large, black and ugly big screen, it came back, and now she has to study all her lessons again, and it was very bad. She was very sad when the county inspector came again very fast. The part Margie hated most was the slot where she had to put homework and test paper. And the part or the thing which she hated most in the computer teacher, it is the place where she had to put her homework and test paper. So there was a special slot given in that computer teacher. A slot means a space or a position in which you have to put something. She always had to write them out in a punch code they made her to learn when she was 6 years old, and the mechanical teacher calculated the marks in no time. So, why she hated this mechanical teacher? That she has to put her exam papers and homework in that particular slot, and she used to write her homework in a special punch code which she learned in the age when she was 6 years old. As you people have learned your alphabets when you were in your preschools, at that same way, when she was 6 years of age, she was being taught this punch code language so that she can write down these homework and test papers and submit it to the mechanical teacher. And when as soon as she used to submit this homework and the test papers, within no time the mechanical teacher used to calculate the marks and give it back to Margie. The inspector smiled after he was finished and patted Margie's head. So he came back, he just installed the mechanical teacher again, and when once he finished his work, he just turned back and patted on Margie's head. He said that it's not the little girl's fault, Mrs. Johns. I think the geography sector was geared a little too quick. So after patting on Margie's head, he just talks with Mrs. Johns. Mrs. Johns is Margie's mother, and he is mentioning that it is not the fault of Margie, but I think the geography sector, that is the geography part, was being little bit geared up. So she was 11 years old, but it was being geared 2 levels higher. So because of that, the whatever questions the geography teacher was giving to her, it was little bit higher, and because of that she was not able to give the answers properly. Those things happen sometimes. I slowed it up to an average 10-year level. So he is telling to her mother that these things happen as it is machine. So these type of things happen sometimes, and he is telling her that I have already worked on it and I have cleared everything and I have made it on an average level of 10-year level. Actually, the overall pattern of her progress is quite satisfactory. And he patted Margie's head again, and then he tells Margie's mother that overall, whatever she has done, according to her level, her progress is very much satisfactory. And after saying this, he is patting on Margie's head again. Margie was disappointed. She had been hoping they would take the teacher away altogether. So when the county inspector came back and reinstalled the mechanical teacher, she was very much disappointed by that, because she has hoped that once the teacher is being taken away from her place, she prayed that the mechanical teacher would never come back. They had once taken Tommy's teacher away for nearly a month because the history sector had blanked out completely. So she was thinking of an instance when once Tommy's mechanical teacher was being taken away, and it was for nearly a month. It was being in the repair, and because of that, for nearly a month he was not studying at his home, because the reason was his history sector, it was completely blanked out. Home assignment: please go through the questions given below and answer them in your notebook. I hope you all understood the first part of the story, the fun they had. Thank you for watching this video.